Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Ramos Jones. I'm the son of Angel Ramos and one of the 8 grandchildren of the late former President Fidel Valdez Ramos and our beloved Lola Ming Ramos. Before we get into it, I just wanted to express, on behalf of myself, our entire family, our gratitude to all of you that have joined us this past week in grieving the loss of our beloved Lolo Eddie, and also in celebrating and giving thanks for all his contributions to our lives. And while we're at it, if I might implore you to also give a round of applause to everyone that has helped us over the last week. The people at Heritage, the AFP, Office of the President, the Philippine National Police, and of course, our extended RPDev family and the army of volunteers that have been with us. Thank you. Sharing this stage with some of the speakers from this evening and throughout this week is very humbling and also somewhat daunting. Like Lolo, I'm not exactly a stranger to public speaking, but this is for sure the most nerve-wracking speech I've ever had to write and give. But Lolo is here watching, so I'll do my best to make him proud. Fidel V. Ramos was many things to many people: a son, a brother, a soldier, a scuba diver, a loving husband and father, a warrior in battle, and a golfing buddy, a problem solver and a peacemaker, an officer, a gentleman, a rebel, and a statesman, a loving grandfather. He was all those things and more to me. I had the great privilege of having him up close and personal, a role model, a living legend of history, a demanding boss, and a supportive, very goofy grandfather, all rolled into one. But he was also just a man, and I don't say that to diminish his life or its many achievements. On the contrary, it's to serve as a reminder that anybody, all of us, might be capable of aspiring to such great heights. He was the best of us and showed us all what this country and its people might achieve. All Filipinos can learn something from his life. He lived through almost a century of our nation's history as a witness and as a participant. Fidel V. Ramos was born on March 18, 1928 in Lingayen, Pangasinan, barely a generation removed from our War of Independence from Spain. His grandfather, Placido Ramos, would fight in that war as a Katipunan revolutionary. His father, Narciso Ramos, was a journalist, lawyer, and later legislator in what was then the Commonwealth of the Philippines. Lolo's mother, Angela Marcos Valdez of Ilocos Norte, was an educator and a very dedicated and loving mother. Manong Eddie had 2 younger sisters, Letty and Gloria. Their life was relatively comfortable and simple before the war, and Lolo was just 13 years old when it came. The Lingayen Gulf would be the site of both Japanese and then later American amphibious landings, and our family's ancestral home was burned to the ground. Lolo Nachong traded the trappings of an assemblyman for the rigors of a guerrilla intelligence officer. Meanwhile, a young Eddie Ramos risked life collecting and couriering secret communications. It was only his first experience with military intelligence, certainly not the last. They lost their property and possessions, some friends and even loved ones, but our family were among the fortunate. They had kept their lives and their courage, and they learned a valuable and humbling lesson, that sometimes you must start over at your beginnings. After the war, Narciso Ramos continued to serve the Philippines, this time by establishing our newly independent republic among the community of nations. He served as minister counselor in Washington, D.C., and as ambassador to Argentina, India, and Taiwan, and ultimately served as foreign minister. Lola Letty Ramos Shahani would more closely follow their father's path as an academic, a diplomat, and a senator. Nobody back then would have pegged Lolo as being destined for a soldier's life. He was considered too bookish and mild-mannered. In fact, he was really interested in pursuing an education as an engineer, to learn and apply a craft that might serve a devastated country in need of rebuilding. Ultimately, he did figure that there was probably not a better engineering education than one provided by the US military. And of course, the full-ride scholarship was an added attraction. FVR's application to West Point, though, hit an immediate snag. Before she passed, Lola Letty told me the story of how FVR had initially failed to meet the minimum physical requirements for West Point because his chest was too small. Shrugging this off as a mere temporary setback, FVR, with trademark Filipino ingenuity, some concrete slabs, steel piping, sweat, and determination, endeavored to build up his strength and his physique. And he would maintain that passion and commitment to physical fitness for the rest of his life, not just as a matter of a personal habit, but as an advocacy to inspire all Filipinos to live healthier and longer lives. Lolo last visited West Point in 2015. It was his 65th graduation anniversary, and I recall very vividly the astonishment and amusement on the faces of those young cadets, 70 years his junior, as he challenged them to a round of 20 push-ups and 20 sit-ups on the floor, which he completed. Upon graduating from West Point in 1950, FVR went on to earn a master's in civil engineering from the University of Illinois, and then returned to the Philippines to begin his long and storied military career. His numerous military achievements are known to history. For example, history books will recall that in 1952, a then Lieutenant Ramos, as infantry reconnaissance platoon leader in the 20th Battalion Combat Team of the Philippine Expeditionary Force to Korea, PEFTOC, served an instrumental role at the Battle of Hill Erie. What history books will not record is the fact that FVR would carry recurring nightmares of that war for the rest of his life. And here lies another crucial lesson. Soldiers that have seen war, true warriors, desire peace above all else. Little wonder then that later in his public service career, FVR sought out peace with former left and right-wing rebels and signed a landmark peace agreement with the Moro National Liberation Front, which paved the path for a lasting peace in Mindanao. As a soldier, Lolo also consistently led from the front. He developed that trait early in his career, and he would take it with him for the rest of his life. As a young officer, he established a reputation for competence and diligence and eagerly taking on more than was expected of him. One military colleague recalled that Captain Ramos was already doing the work of a colonel. More impressive to me, though, is the fact that he established that sterling reputation purely on his own merits. Early in his career, most of his colleagues had no idea that his father was a prominent diplomat or that he had an even more famous Ilocano cousin. Lolo always ensured that he took on the same hardships as his men, and he believed strongly that a person's worth is determined not by their name or their bloodline, but by the content of their character and of their conduct. As a soldier and as the son of an eminent diplomat, FVR had the good fortune of traveling to many places, meeting and learning from people of all walks of life. This worldly perspective he would also maintain for the rest of his life. So while FVR was the ultimate Filipino patriot, he also saw himself as a citizen of the world. As a young man, he had seen war at home, in Korea, in Vietnam. As an older man, he sought peace, friendship, and partnership, both at home and across the globe. He believed that the Philippines has an important role to play in regional and global affairs. And if he were here, he would implore me to remind you that that has never been more true than it is today. For all his international travels, though, Lolo's prolific local travels during his military career may have been even more important. My mom speculates that FVR very well may have visited every single barangay in the Philippines at least once. Indeed, he would need to call on every single one of those many friends he had made across the country and across decades during those tense days in February 1986. The history of EDSA has sadly become a matter of the present culture war debate. In those politicized narratives, we often lose sight of simpler, unifying truths. That the EDSA revolution was bloodless in it of itself can be thought of as a miracle. That the AFP did not fracture, that this country was spared a potential civil war before, during, and after EDSA is one of FVR's greatest, most enduring, and perhaps underappreciated legacies. Underpinning Lolo's actions at EDSA were his convictions as a Democrat and a Christian. Ultimately, regardless of chains of command or hierarchies or blood ties, his faith taught him that in times of moral crisis, a man must be answerable to God and his conscience alone. FVR heard and answered his call to duty, honor, and country. And in that moment, where he chose to risk his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor on an uncertain outcome, he also made a pact, a covenant with God. The man nicknamed Tobacco negotiated with his creator that if their revolution would succeed and Lolo might survive, he would give up his smoking habit. When you make a covenant with God, you must keep it. Though ever the shrewd negotiator, Lolo seemed to have found a contractual loophole in chewing his cigars ever after. Lolo's faith would also manifest in his tireless work ethic, which he insisted on inculcating in all of those who worked with him. The phrase Protestant work ethic comes to mind, but as you've all heard, another motto more strongly comes to mind in the hearts and minds of those who worked with FVR, CSW, complete staff work. The ethics of CSW served not just Lolo in his own career, but certainly served the nation as he governed it. Having ascended to the highest office in the land, Lolo became the first Filipino officer in history to hold every rank in the armed forces from second lieutenant all the way up to commander-in-chief. And having reached the apex of his career, he never took it easy. As with his military record, his achievements as president are well known to history. But those many achievements were simply the outcome of what I believe is the more important story of how he governed. Once again, he led from the front, but he governed from the center. For all his own brilliance, FVR's greatest achievements could not have been accomplished alone. All throughout his life, he appreciated the necessity and the power of teamwork. He worked with all sectors of society and reached out across political divides to form a rainbow coalition. He would work with anyone and everyone so long as they were interested in getting down to work too. He also listened because he knew that no one person has all the answers. His approach to governance was through consultation and frank discussion. He was open to criticism and did not take it personally. But he was also decisive in his decision-making, and crucially, he took full responsibility for the decisions he made. He showed us a model for representative democracy, good governance, and crucially, effective governance. Over the past week, our family has been awestruck and overwhelmed by the support and love that this nation has shown. It has been truly a humbling and privileged experience to see just how many people from all sectors, from all ends of the political spectrum, from all walks of life and all over the world, Lolo was able to touch. Before wrapping up, my mother Angel asked me to share a poem with you all. Good thing it is one of my favorite poems as well, and it happened to be one of Lolo's also. Mom and I think it perfectly sums up the kind of man Lolo was, the values he lived by, and the values he passed down to us. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up again with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except for the will which says, hold on. If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and all that's in it, and what's more, you'll be a man, my son. By his life, FVR has set the ultimate example. But for all of his astonishing achievements, let us remember, FVR was just a man, a person, a human being, as are we all. Mortal, yes, even flawed perhaps, and yet just as capable of the same heroic acts and almost boundless achievement. He was the best of us, but if I've learned one thing from him, above all else, it is that the best is in us all. It is up to us to realize our own potential, just as he did, just as he would want us to, just as we know he would be proud of us for doing. Looking back over FVR's past life, we might ask ourselves, if we each live as long and achieve even only half as much as FVR, what good might we do for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, for this country? Imagine all the more what good we might do if we did it together. In his later years, FVR spoke often of and to the younger ones, the generation of Filipinos that would have to take up the mantle of leadership. He recognized that the world was changing, that there are new threats we must face to protect our environment, to maintain regional security, and to adapt to rapidly evolving technology. He recognized, too, that long-standing problems remain: malnutrition, poverty, ignorance, and corruption. This is the challenge. This is the opportunity that lays before us. To truly honor FVR's legacy, let us then be here dedicated to the unfinished task that remains, the great task of protecting and perfecting this republic. Now, a grateful nation thanks Fidel Valdez Ramos for his service. A loving family will grieve his absence, and we will all cherish what he has taught us. Now it is time for this old soldier's well-deserved rest. He fought the good fight. He has finished his work. But we have not. I saw that one eminent historian referred to FVR's passing as the passing of a generation. Let us instead think of it as the passing of the torch. Lolo, thank you for everything. We love you. We are so proud of you. And while we are in no means in a rush to get there, we very much look forward to seeing you again one day. Until then, boss.